Real-Time 1960s presents Evening Report, a complete roundup of today's news with Joe Rubenstein.
Good evening. In Washington, President Kennedy denounces big steel. In Europe, a sleeping pill causes thousands of birth defects. In Vietnam, communist guerrillas murder 2 American prisoners. Hollywood turns out for the Oscars. The New York Mets make history. And Michael Curtiz is dead. Those are the headlines. The details after this message.
Start fresh with L&M. Stay fresh with L&M. Unlock a whole new world of fresh smoke and pleasure. Start fresh, stay fresh with L&M.
Fresh tasting, best tasting L&M in pack or box.
The U.S. Steel Corporation announced price increases last night, averaging $6 a ton. The other major steel companies are expected to follow suit. The increase comes just 5 days after the companies had signed a 2-year contract with the United Steelworkers Union. President Kennedy had worked hard for almost a year to get this critical industry and its workers to exercise restraint on both prices and wages. With last week's contract, acclaimed by the president as non-inflationary, the administration had thought this problem was solved. At today's press conference, a visibly irate President Kennedy delivered a scathing indictment of Big Steel.
In this serious hour in our nation's history, when we are confronted with grave crises in Berlin and Southeast Asia, when we are devoting our energies to economic recovery and stability, when we are asking reservists to leave their homes and families and servicemen to risk their lives, and 4 were killed in the last 2 days in Vietnam, and asking union members to hold down their wage requests, the American people will find it hard, as I do, to accept a situation in which a tiny handful of steel executives, whose pursuit of private power and profit exceeds their sense of public responsibility, can show such utter contempt for the interests of 185 million Americans. If this rise in the cost of steel is imitated by the rest of the industry, it would increase the cost of homes, autos, appliances, and most other items for every American family. It would increase the cost of machinery and tools to every American businessman and farmer. It would seriously handicap our efforts to prevent an inflationary spiral from eating up the pensions of our older citizens. It would add, Secretary McNamara informed me this morning, an estimated $1 billion to the cost of our defenses at a time when every dollar is needed for national security and other purposes. The facts of the matter are that there is no justification for an increase in steel prices. The recent settlement between the industry and the union, which does not even take place until July 1st, was widely acknowledged to be non-inflationary. And for an industry which has been generally operating at less than 2/3 of capacity, its profit rate has been normal and can be expected to rise sharply this year. Their lot has been easier than that of 100,000 steelworkers thrown out of work in the last 3 years. The Steelworkers Union can be proud that it abided by its responsibilities in this agreement. And this government also has responsibilities which we intend to meet.
The president suggested that government reprisal against the steel corporations should be expected.
The Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission are examining the significance of this action in a free, competitive economy. The Department of Defense and other agencies are reviewing its impact on their policies of procurement. And I am informed that steps are underway by those members of the Congress who plan appropriate inquiries into how these price decisions are so quickly made and reached, and what legislative safeguards may be needed to protect the public interest. Some time ago, I asked each American to consider what he would do for his country, and I asked the steel companies. In the last 24 hours, we had their answer.
Dr. Helen Taussig, professor of pediatrics at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, is calling for tighter regulations on the introduction of new drugs in this country. Dr. Taussig just returned from an inspection tour of German and British medical centers where she observed deformed babies born to mothers who took thalidomide, a prescription sleeping pill. The babies were born with undeveloped stub-like arms and legs to mothers who took the drug, often before they knew they were pregnant. Some 4,000 such births in West Germany and 1,000 in Great Britain have been linked to the drug. Roughly 1/3 of the babies die at birth or shortly thereafter. Thalidomide, widely sold in West Germany and Britain since 1958, was taken off the market 5 months ago. In a speech today at the American College of Physicians in Philadelphia, Dr. Taussig said, quote, "We must strengthen our food and drug regulations to include routine testing of new compounds on pregnant animals. Thalidomide could have passed our present drug laws," unquote. The fact that it didn't pass is being credited to a female physician and reviewer with the FDA, Dr. Frances Kelsey. The William S. Merrill Company had planned to introduce the drug in the U.S. under the trade name Kevadon. However, the company did not obtain federal approval to sell the drug here because Dr. Kelsey was not convinced of its safety. Her refusal thus prevented a major tragedy in this country. U.S. Army sources in South Vietnam report that 2 wounded American sergeants were murdered in cold blood by their communist captors in Da Nang over the weekend. 2 other American sergeants who were captured unwounded are believed to be prisoners of the Viet Cong. The sergeants were escorting a Vietnamese platoon on a training mission when they were overrun by roughly 100 communist guerrillas. The 2 wounded sergeants were shot in the face at close range by a heavy caliber pistol, apparently because they could not keep up. The Army identified the murdered soldiers as Sergeant Wayne Marchand of Plattsmouth, Nebraska, and Sergeant James Gabriel of Honolulu. The unwounded sergeants were identified as Sergeant Francis Quinn of Niagara Falls, New York, and Sergeant George Groom of St. Joseph, Missouri. The incident was raised today at the President's press conference.
Sir, what are you going to do about American soldiers getting killed in Vietnam?
Well, I'm as extremely concerned about American soldiers who are in a great many areas in hazard. We are attempting to help Vietnam maintain its independence and not fall under the domination of the communists. The government has stated that it needs our assistance in doing it, and it presents a very hazardous operation in the same sense that World War II, World War I, Korea, a good many thousands and hundreds of thousands of Americans died. But we cannot desist in Vietnam, and I think that it is the fact that these men operating very far from home, very far indeed from Saigon, under great danger, and there are many others, it is in that setting that I look at the present actions.
I'll have more news for you after this message.
Dream Whip just melts in your mouth, but not on your desserts. I can whip it up hours before dinner, decorate my desserts, even add the finishing touches. Then when dessert time rolls around, they're all ready to serve. No last-minute rush. And Dream Whip is still fresh as ever. It won't wilt or separate like other toppings.
And if there's any Dream Whip left, you can keep it fresh in your refrigerator for days. Use it later in the week to dress up gingerbread, or perhaps on a pie. So delicious, yet only 17 calories per tablespoon serving. Low in cost, too. Try Dream Whip soon. Another fine product of General Foods. Dream Whip.
Here again, Joe Rubenstein.
President Kennedy announced today that all military reservists called up during the Berlin crisis last year will be released in August unless the international situation takes a turn for the worse.
The release is not the result of any marked change in the international situation. It is the result, rather, of our successful buildup of permanent instead of emergency strength. The units we release will remain available in a new and heightened state of combat readiness. I know that I speak for all of our countrymen in expressing our appreciation to all those who've served, and their service and the willingness of the great, great majority of all of them to do this uncomplainingly, I think should be an inspiration to every American.
West Side Story, the film adaptation of the 1957 Broadway musical, scored a major triumph Monday night, winning the Academy Award for Best Picture of 1961 as well as 9 other Oscars. The Best Actress Award went to Sophia Loren for her performance in Vittorio De Sica's war drama, Two Women. It was the first time a major Oscar went to a foreign actress in a foreign language film. A potentially awkward situation was sidestepped when George C. Scott, supporting actor nominee for his performance in The Hustler, lost to George Chakiris of West Side Story. Mr. Scott, in protesting the intensive campaigning done by the various nominees, had requested that the Academy withdraw his nomination. Mr. Scott's action provided a source of humor last night for Master of Ceremonies Bob Hope.
Well, what a turnout. Everybody's here tonight. Everybody except George Scott. He's sitting at home with his back to the set. He's the one person in our audience who will come back into the room for the commercials. You remember George Scott? He's the actor who said if he wins an Oscar, he's not going to accept it. And Hollywood needs more people like him. If enough people refuse Oscars, maybe I'll get one. He accused Hollywood of being obsessed with the Oscars. Isn't that silly? I remember a couple of days last July when nobody even mentioned it.
The Academy Award for Best Actor went to 31-year-old Maximilian Schell for his portrayal of the German defense attorney in Judgment at Nuremberg. It was just the second Hollywood role for the Austrian-born Swiss actor.
I know this award honors not only me, but also the picture, Judgment in Nuremberg, my wonderful director, and the great cast, and especially that great old man who was nominated for the 8th times now, Spencer Tracy. When I came first to this country, I met the custom man, and he was asking me what I was doing here, and I said, I'm going to do a film. And he said to me, good luck, boy. And I think that was very unusual for a custom man, and I can tell him now that I had it. Thank you very much.
And some sad news from Hollywood. Veteran director Michael Curtiz died of cancer last night. He was 72 years old. Mr. Curtiz, who won a directing Oscar for Casablanca in 1943, directed 102 pictures in Hollywood, most of them for Warner Brothers. In summarizing his philosophy of filmmaking, Mr. Curtiz once said, quote, I put all the art into my pictures that I think the audience can stand, unquote. Besides Casablanca, his most famous films were Captain Blood, Charge of the Light Brigade, Angels with Dirty Faces, Life with Father, and Mildred Pierce. Sports, right after this.
Civil defense is common sense. This is Howard Duff with this reminder. 640 and 1240. These are the Conelrad frequencies during a national emergency. 640 and 1240 on your regular radio will be your only official means of receiving vital information. Remember, 640 and 1240.
At Busch Stadium in St. Louis tonight, the New York Mets played their first regular season game ever and were soundly beaten by two teams, the Cardinals and themselves. The final score was 11-4. The National League newcomers committed 3 errors in a single inning, allowed 3 stolen bases, and their starting pitcher, former Brooklyn Dodger Roger Craig, committed a critical balk in the first inning that led to one of 2 Cardinal runs in that frame. The Mets, however, fought back in the top of the 4th. Trailing 5-2, Gil Hodges, another ex-Dodger, walked up to the plate to face right-hander Larry Jackson.
Gil popped up to the third baseman. He is 0 for 1. Right-hander back, and there's a drive deep to left field. This one could go all the way. Manoso's back by the ball. He can't get to it. A home run. Gil Hodges was a home run for the New York Mets. Their first one, that's 362 for Gil Hodges, the first one of this ball game. And the score of the game is now 5-3. That home run by Gil Hodges has just placed him ahead of Joe DiMaggio on the all-time home run list.
And the Mets crept closer in the 5th with another solo shot from Charlie Neal. However, Neal's moment of glory was brief. After a leadoff double by Gene Oliver in the Cardinals' 6th, shortstop Julio Gotay stepped up to face Mets reliever Bob Moorhead.
Now Bob Moorhead makes the 1-second stop. Kicks the leg, delivers. Ground ball hits the second base. Neal has it through his leg. Around third and holding up is Gene Oliver as Charlie Neal cocks that arm to make a throw. Johnny Keane, coaching on the lines of third, held him up. It'll be an error charge to Charlie Neal. Charlie just about had that one in his glove, and it slithered off, went through his legs, and rolled into short right field.
And Neal's blunder opened the floodgates, as St. Louis scored 4 runs in the inning, 3 unearned. The Cardinals never looked back. St. Louis first baseman Bill White knocked in 3 runs tonight, the high man in that category. In a recent interview, White stated his one goal for 1962.
Well, I'd like to win a pennant with the Cardinals. I've never played on a pennant winner since I've been up here in the majors. I played on a couple in the minors, and I know how it feels to win, and to win consistently, and we haven't been doing that yet, although we have won 80-some ball games a couple years I've been here. But we haven't been able to put the real good year together because of many things. We get off to slow starts, and then we find ourselves going up a treadmill. But this year, I think we'll do a little bit better.
And if Stan Musial persists in defying Father Time, the Cards may contend this year. Stan the Man, now 42, went 3 for 3 with 2 singles and a double tonight as he resumed his assault on Major League records. Musial's run scored in the 3rd was the 1,859th of his 20-year career, tying him with Mel Ott for the National League record. And the perennial All-Star needs just 26 more hits to tie Honus Wagner's league record of 3,430. Musial, in between cigar puffs in the clubhouse after tonight's game, said, quote, I want to get those hits quick. You never know when fate may step in, unquote. And that, for this evening, completes our look at the latest news on this Wednesday, April 11th, 1962. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day tomorrow.
This has been your Evening Report, a roundup of the latest news with Joe Rubenstein.